Daria Grigoriu. I'm also a PM on Azure Static Web Apps and one of the co-creators of the service, and it's nice to meet you. Mitali?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mitali Karmarkar. I'm the engineering manager on the Static Web Apps team and been here from the start of the service. So super excited to meet all of you.
All right, thank you very much. And so today we're going to be talking about building global full stack serverless apps with, you might have guessed it by now, static web apps. So when we think about static web apps and every time we go into planning and figuring out what our next set of commitments are, we're always striving to make it as easy as possible for you to build those global full stack serverless apps. And so each of those words is part of our commitment, right? So we want you to build your global applications so that you have your quickest download time, so you make your users very happy and giving them joy of accessing your applications. When we think of serverless, we think of how do we enable you to deploy your applications without having to worry about the scale, right? You deploy once and then boom, you're mind free, you're focusing on talking to your customers and figuring out what are your next set of features. And then full stack, we want to allow you to have the functionality within your hosting platform to build out the applications, whatever you want them to be. So we really go beyond the quote unquote static word and then allowing you to build the apps that you want to have. So today we want to share with you a couple of the recent features that we've been working on to make it easier to build these applications. And we'll give you a quick sneak peek into a couple future features that we have in store as well.
Also, if you have questions, this is a Q&A. So like if you have questions, I will run around the room with the microphone so everybody can hear. So just either speak up or indicate something. I'll keep an eye out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, oops, that was really close. So a quick rundown of what Static Web Apps is, in case you haven't heard about it. We make it really easy for you to go from your source code to global serverless scale, right? So from the beginning, the vision has been to take your source code from your code repository, whether that's DevOps or GitHub or any source code host, and then we globally deploy that with static web apps. And over time, we've seen that a lot of customers want to add functionality onto their static web apps. And so what we ended up building is making it very easy for you to connect with the rest of your Azure services. So that's with our linked backend APIs, whether that be container apps, app service, function apps, or API management. And this is actually one of the features that went GA this build. So we're really happy about that. Another aspect of this is making it really easy for you to add a CDN, so you have the most optimized content delivery of your static assets. And for that, we built out the enterprise-grade Edge feature, which is sort of a managed Azure front door offering, where without having to configure anything additionally, with a simple checkbox, you have a CDN on your static web app. And then one of the most recent features that we previewed was database connections. And so we know that a lot of the usage of backend APIs is to have that CRUD access to databases, right? And so we partnered with the database teams to build out database connections, which allows you to have access to your databases through a set of either REST or GraphQL endpoints so that you can really easily make those CRUD access to your databases. So out of everyone here, has anyone used static web apps before? I'm curious to hear. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For the ones at home, we have 6 people. It's really great to see that. 2 in the chat. Okay, sounds good. And that's really great to see, right? And I think maybe after having viewed this session, you'll probably be tempted to go try it out. Is because static web apps is very, very cheap. You can host it on a free tier if you have any dev or personal workloads. And then if you want to upgrade to the standards queue, that's a $9 a month, right? So I think it's a really good option when you're looking to cost optimize, you're hosting your React, you're hosting your Angular or your Vue project. It's a really compelling option.
Yeah, honestly, I think if you take nothing away from this is that we have tons of features on static web apps for your front end apps, the global availability, the authentication authorization, the database stuff. Starts free, direct integration with best practices for things like GitHub, CI/CD, that kind of thing. Yeah, and best price, the absolute best price. I'm super biased, but it is the best product at the best price on Azure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we do have some demos prepared. If there are not questions, we can show some stuff off, specifically like how you would actually get started with static web apps. But now would be a great time for questions. That's great.
I'm actually curious. I'm actually curious to hear more about the questions you were asking at the beginning of the session. You were asking like, where are people hosting these applications and what they're building, right? So who here is hosting React applications somewhere on Azure? Who here is building React applications? Yeah, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, there were more than that. Take off the on Azure part.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, sounds good. Who here is more of an Angular fanboy? Or girl?
Andrew, thank you.
Or fan person. Excellent. Okay, perfect. Excellent. And then do we have any Vue or Svelte fanatics?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple. Okay, awesome. Well, you found yourselves to the right session. Thank you for coming here. Okay, excellent. Well, these are all frameworks that you could easily host on static web apps. We try to make it as easy as possible to go ahead and deploy there. And then we cannot omit Blazor. I think you would hate me for that, Matt, because you love Blazor as well.
I do. Anybody doing Blazor WASM specifically front end stuff? Nice. We do actually. We did ship a nice experience in VS, and I see Matt on the call as well. We did ship a nice feature in VS where you can right-click publish the same way you would like an ASP.NET app directly to static web apps. That does exist and it works really well. We are going to do some different things coming up. If anybody attended the .NET 8 session yesterday, some of the I forget what they called it. Internally, it was called United, I believe. But the front end and back end and mixing all of those pieces together, we'll be supporting that as well. I'm very excited about that.
Awesome. Okay. Let's jump into a live demo. That always gets the ball rolling.
You want me to do a getting started first?
Sure. You want to do getting started? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so when you go to your preferred search provider and search for Azure Static Web Apps, you will find this really nice quick start. This one here is, oh wait, there's a hand up in the chat. Is that a hand up for a question? If so, just type it in and I will keep an eye out for it. Yeah, so you'll land in this quick start. I'm not actually going to follow the quick start. I just wanted to show this this really nice template here and to give you an idea of just how quickly and easily you can get started with static web apps. Again, if you take nothing away from this, the amazing experience and the price. So this is our Angular template. There were a handful of folks doing Angular, and create from this. This is me. Again, if you have questions, like just start talking. Okay, so this is just essentially my fork of this template, right? So from here, I can literally just hit period on my keyboard, and I am dropped into github.dev. If you're not familiar with this, it's essentially VS Code running entirely in your browser. This is fairly new. Yeah, and since this app, I've actually gone through here before. It recognized this particular space, so it has some stuff set up for me already. When you first do this, you will end up with this extensions file that will help you. It'll give you a notification to install Azure Static Web Apps, the extension, and then this little icon will pop up, and you can access your Azure subscriptions. From here, I'm actually going to focus on this so it's a little less busy. And then from here, I can access all of my Azure Static Web Apps. But more importantly, from here, I can right click and, oh, I can't do it from this one. Create static web app. Now, since I'm connected to a repo, like there's no actual source code running on my machine. All of this is connected directly to GitHub. It's essentially just mounting in the GitHub repo. It's going to give me some pre-filled defaults here. I'll just pick everything, and then it's going to go. Now, again, we're connected to GitHub, so we're going to get a handful of different things. I'm going to go back into File Explorer here. And we're going to refresh. So I just got this .github directory, which created this actions YAML, this workflow YAML file. And this has everything that I need to automatically deploy my changes to static web apps for some specific actions. You'll see build and deploy on on push and on close pull request job. We'll talk a little bit more, I think, about the close pull request stuff, but for now, like the real meat is just the secrets were created for you, the pieces were hooked up. It's actually going off and deploying this app right now. And I know that because this notification popped up. And if I go into that action, you'll actually see it running. I tried to talk long enough that it would be done by now, but I did not succeed.
There's one thing I wanted to mention too. While Matt is showing us the integration with VS Code and VS Code Web, we actually try to make it as easy as possible for you to deploy your static web apps, regardless of where you are, right? You can start directly from the portal and then select your repository. We'll go ahead and configure your GitHub actions so you get your preview environments and your CI/CD out of the box. You can also do that with the AZ CLI. You can do that with the AZD CLI, which I'm sure you've heard of by now. And we also have our own CLI that makes it really easy for you to go ahead and start deploying those projects. So this was one version of it, but depending on what your workflow is, you might prefer one or the other of these. So
yeah, for sure. And honestly, like this was really just, I didn't want to jump between a bunch of different tools. I'm just jumping between a couple of different browser tabs.
And I think you're most excited about this because we just shipped this a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, this is actually, it's from the previous team that I worked with, and it's actually very, very fresh. So yes, very excited about this. You can bounce out of this as well. If you are familiar with the portal and you want to do some more advanced stuff, you can go and open this in the portal and get directly to your app. Let's see, we are running now. So if I go for my production, browse site, open, it is not the most exciting demo, but it is running Angular. And now I'm all set up for CI/CD. Like I said, over here in that workflow file, you'll see anytime I push changes to this, it's just automatically going to update. You don't have to set any of that stuff up. You don't have to go get the publish profile or API token. We just do it for you.
So Matt, we actually have a couple questions in the chat.
Oh, sweet.
So Matt Zamora is asking, do you have the ability to deploy from Azure Dev Repos?
Is that Azure DevOps? Is that what that means?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I presume.
Yes,
Not. I misread the question. From Azure DevOps, not Azure.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, you scared me because. Let's just go portal.azure.com. So that's going to be the best way to do this is through the portal, and you're seeing like all of my stuff here, but it's okay. And right here. So at the bottom where you choose like the actual source for your application, just choose Azure DevOps, log in like you would normally, select your repo, your branch, and everything's good to go the exact same way.
Awesome. And then we actually have another question that I think you'd be really well positioned to answer.
Oh, excellent, because I have a microphone.
Is deployment built into Visual Studio?
Yes. So there is some deployment built into Visual Studio. Right now, it only supports Blazor WASM. Right now, we will bring more stuff. Actually, that's a good question. Person who asked that question. are you doing something other than .NET and VS that you're looking to ship to Static Web Apps?
So this question would be for Martin J.D. Jones.
Oh, it looks like Mitali answered it already.
Also in the chat, we have a couple questions regarding Next.js 13, and I see that there have been responses, but Mitali or Daria, do you want to come off mute and maybe share a bit of the responses that you've provided in the chat?
Sure, I can speak to this. So Next.js is currently in public preview, and the GA is something we're actively working towards. We are hoping to hit GA sometime in the next few months, and we will keep you up to date on the progress. And when we do that, we would have GA support for Next.js hybrid.
Awesome. Thanks, Mitali. So actually, speaking of Next.js, I'm going to segue into my demo. Okay, there you go. My turn. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Here we are. This was our presentation. This is our chat mat. And
sensitive stuff.
Well, we were just talking about this presentation. Now it's getting unveiled, so I don't think there was much in there. But okay, so for this demo, we're going to be building an Azure Jokes website, a web app. We're going to be building with Next.js, and I'm going to show you all about that. We're going to be using OpenAI and everything that I've learned over the past couple of days about prompt engineering. And then we're going to be hosting that on Static Web Apps, and I'll also have the chance to show you database connections feature. So, by the way, if there are any questions in the chat, please let me know. But let's jump right into it. So here I have a really basic Next.js application. I just went ahead and scaffolded it. I wanted to use Next.js because I wanted to show you how we can host Next.js applications on Static Web Apps. Now, you might look at me and say, that's kind of weird because Next.js kind of goes beyond static. Well, we actually make it really easy to host these new cohort of meta front-end frameworks like Next.js, like Angular Universal, like SvelteKit, like Nuxt. And what we do is at deploy time, we sort of package the static assets and host those on our global distribution network. And then all of the dynamic compute, the API routes, the server rendering routes, we host that on our managed Azure functions. So within a single Next.js application, you can deploy that to a single Static Web Apps resource, and everything's covered under the hood. So that makes it really one of the better options on Azure when you're hosting these applications because you get that global content distribution while having those serverless backends as they were intended when those frameworks were authored. So this is my Next.js application. If you're not familiar with Next.js, here I have an API. It's a pretty simple Hello World API. They use file system-based routing. So by having that convention of that API route and this file, that's essentially going to be an API endpoint. Now, you saw the form that I had sort of to capture the input. When a customer is going to click submit, I'm going to fire off that API request to that /API/hello, and then we're going to capture that here. So we're going to use this API endpoint to call all of our OpenAI goodness and then sort of get a joke from a customer input. I'm not going to bore you with the details and my slow typing, so I'm going to jump right to, no, those were my keys. Okay, one second. All right, please bear with me.
You just got to rotate them now. It's all, yeah.
Well, I think the password was fine, so I'll just hop right back on. Okay, there you go.
You shouldn't have said anything.
Well, then people would have wondered why I stopped sharing. Anyways, okay, I renamed the file, called it prompt.js. So that by doing that, I changed the API endpoint. And in here, I also set up my OpenAI configuration. So I'm using the OpenAI SDK. I'm giving it a couple examples of the type of responses that I want to get and giving it a prompt. I'm passing in the user input that I got from the request, and then I'm responding back to the user in my page. So if I go ahead and show you the application again, I'm going to open up the network tab and refresh the page. I have all of this running behind the scenes. And Anybody got an example of an Azure function or an Azure service that they want to hear about? Just go ahead, blurt it out.
ACI.
Azure Container Instances. Okay, let me go ahead and write that in. Azure Container Instances. Okay, not apps, but instances.
You can tell it wasn't scripted because it wasn't pre-populated.
And you also decided one of the longer ones. But thanks, Matt. Let me go ahead and let's see what joke we get out of Azure Container Instances. Why did the Docker container break up with Azure Container Instances? Because it found another host. There we go. Clearly, OpenAI is a great comedian, and I want to save this result now, and conveniently, because I came prepared to this demo, I actually have a database in which I want to save these results. So in this table, I want to go ahead and add for the Azure service, what joke did it come up with? And we can do that really easily with database connections. So let me go ahead and show you how we can do that. I'm going to jump right back into here. And the first thing we're going to do to enable database connections on our project is we're going to use the SWA CLI. So the SWA CLI, I mentioned it before, but it allows you to use a lot of the Azure Static Web Apps functionality in your local development environment. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this command, SWA db init. I'm going to pass it a couple arguments. I'm going to be connecting to a PostgreSQL database, and I've already set my connection strings to my environment variables. And just like that, it's going to create the configurations needed in order to connect to my database. So it created my SWADB connections folder. In here, I have my configuration for my data source, a couple runtime parameters, and then we have this empty entities object. Now, this is where the fun begins, because this is where you select which entities and which tables you want to expose as REST or GraphQL endpoints. So I actually have this pre-configured, pre-written out here in this project. I'm going to expose the joke entity. The source is going to be the joke table, and then I'm going to have a couple permissions. Now, that's one thing I didn't mention about database connections, is that it integrates with Static Web Apps' own authentication to make it really easy for you to add RBAC to any of the actions on the entities you expose. And once you have this file, that's essentially it, right? You've configured your database connections. Now, we've been working hand in hand with the database teams to make this a really compelling experience. And out of this came out the Data API Builder project. If you're curious and you want to see how that's working under the hood, go ahead and read up more on Data API Builder. But just by starting that, by having that configuration file and then starting it up, we're going to be able to have a series of REST and GraphQL endpoints. So let me go ahead. I'm going to, yes, thank you. Okay, I am going to start my next project. I just started that on the left, and I am going to start my application. All right, so we're going to do SWA start -- app dev server URL. Let me just minimize this. So that's going to go to my localhost 3000 and then -- API dev server URL. So these are essentially going to be proxies to my next application. And that way, any requests that are going to go to my emulated static web apps are going to be resolved by my next server. And the other thing I'm going to do is indicate my data API location. And so with this, I'm just going to indicate that in my SWADB connections folder, I have all the configs to contact that. Now, yes, thank you. Thanks, Matt. Now, with this, we actually get a series of REST endpoints. So as you can imagine, we have here a Swagger that documents our different jokes and the different endpoints, as well as a couple of the parameters. And within Swagger, you can go ahead and test this out. And so we built this into our SWA CLI. So if I were to go ahead and start this up again, we're actually running under the hood the Data API Builder engine for us to provide all of these endpoints. Now, when I go ahead and load up my application again, Going to hard refresh to show you this, but we're now going to localhost 4280 because that's the Swasili port. And then we're now receiving all of the jokes. So here, I didn't show you, but what we're doing is we're actually making an API call to the /data API /rest/joke endpoint. So if I zoom in, I actually have inserted a fetch to this endpoint within my code. And these are the endpoints that are provided by database connections. So if I go ahead and tab on back to my code and show you within my index.js, here I'm making a pretty simple get whenever I'm loading the page on first load. Okay, so now that we've added database connections, let me show you how easy it is to go ahead and deploy this. So I've already created a static web app tied to this repository. I'd go ahead and git add, commit, push, all of that goodness. And then what I can do is once I push my content to my repository, I can actually enable database connections really easily by going onto this tab and then linking my existing database. So in my case, I'm connecting to a PostgreSQL database. My resource group is for the OpenAI Next.js DBCon, and then I'm going to choose the database that I have associated to this. So it's my jokes database, and then I'm going to enter my credentials. There we go. And I've already configured my database to accept the connection with static web apps. And so now I can head on over to my deployed static web apps and I can show you, there we go. And I can show you the network tab to show you the requests we're making. So in here, we're going to be making one request to the Next.js API whenever we generate a joke, and we're making a request to the database connections API. So with this, I'm making the request to the /data API /rest/joke, which is provided by database connections, fetching everything that I had shown you in my database. And we once again still have our OpenAI working whenever we generate a joke and then receive the response from the OpenAI and then show that to the user. There we go. That's it. And so we just went ahead and built an application using OpenAI, using database connections to build out that CRUD functionality that a lot of your apps you can expect to have. And we deployed that to static web apps really easily and conveniently without having to focus on all the underlying infrastructure, right? And so we really optimized to make it easy for you to concentrate on your code and the business value that you're delivering with your application. And we basically make it trivially easy to go ahead and host these on static web apps.
Yeah, there's no ORM, there's no like Express server, ASP.NET server that you have to build to wrap the database and pull that stuff out. It's just config file.
Yep, exactly.
Wish we had this when I was like 20 doing a startup.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the more productive ways to go ahead and build out one of these easily quick startable applications.
Yeah. So we are we're quite a bit into this, and we still have no questions. Oh, wait, sorry. Yeah, we have some in the chat, but we have actually in here.
Peter has been asking a lot about Next.js.
Oh, and we have one in person. Okay.
I'll answer Peter's Next.js.
I'm gonna go.
So Peter, to your point, Peter's asking about Next.js. Next.js recently moved on to Next 13, in which they're adopting React server components, and he's asking about the new app directory and server components. So we're actually working in order to support expressly Next 13. Right now, a couple cloud advocates have told me that they kind of made it work, but formally we're looking into a couple issues that are remaining regarding the caching. But I think that within a couple months, we'll have formal Next 13 support with static web apps. And then a couple months after that, we'll bring out our own Next.js GA for that SLA support for Next.js on static web apps. So that's a good question, Peter. Thanks for asking.
In person here.
Yeah, I was just wondering if does static web apps support more complex scenarios where you might have multiple API backends living in separate function apps? that may be sitting behind an API management layer with code living in multiple repositories that you can bundle up and deploy all together.
Yeah, absolutely. So with static web apps, we make it really easy for you to start, but then we make it really easy for you to extend into Azure. So the same way that we have managed functions, if you were to provide that within your repository, you can actually opt into using your own APIs. So with the managed functions, any route that goes to the /API, we're actually hosting an Azure function for you on your behalf. But when you bring your own backend, we actually were going to do the proxying. And like you mentioned, if you have an APIM instance, an API management instance, we'll actually do that proxying. So what we see is a lot of customers are having their React or their front-end applications on static web apps, bringing along their API management instance, and then they have access to all the different APIs that they have assigned to that. So the same way that you can do everything with static web apps, we make it really easy for you to extend within Azure. So bring your own API is one of those ways. AFD is another one of those ways. And that's really what we strive to do, right? Try to make it really easy for you to start, but powerful enough for you to extend within the rest of your Azure and integrate with the rest of your Azure services. Good question.
So Mitali has her hand up.
Yeah, I think to qualify on your question, we do, like Thomas said, support you to bring your APIM instance and link it to your static web app. The one thing that the bring your own offering does not have is the automated deployments where we take code from your GitHub repo or DevOps repo and deploy it to the backends. That's only reserved for our managed functionality, which is currently just at managed functions.
Yeah, so for instance, if you had a repository for Azure Function 1, you'd go ahead and configure that deployment to your Azure Function 1, and you'd have your separate, maybe an app service, you'd configure that deployment from your repository to your app service, and then you'd have a separate one for your static web apps.
So Martin asked about debugging server-side processes, and so I did want to show something. I had like a bit of a demo set up for something similar, but I do want to show the backend component to that. So let me actually just delete this directory entirely. So so this is a Vue app. It's a Vue app. It's a fairly simple one. But in here, when you install the Azure Static Web Apps extension, it has what VS Code calls a debug provider, and it'll actually help you with setting up the debugging and stuff. If you've ever messed with a launch.json in VS Code, yeah, this will prevent you from having to do that. So in this case, you just show all automatic debug configs, and you'll see this one right here, Azure Static Web Apps, that it just comes from the extension. Clicking into that. If you don't have the SWA CLI, because it does leverage the SWA CLI, if you don't have that installed, the first thing it'll say is you need to do this. Just click OK or install, and it'll do it for you in the background. But this will set up the front end piece. But the question was about the back end piece, and I do want to show that as well. It makes a little bit more sense if I show the front end first. So this does have like all the breakpoints that you would expect and everything like that. When I close this, you'll see the debugger stops. Now, if I come in here and I add an HTTP function and I pick JavaScript, v3, and call it parts again. So this will actually give me a functions backend. And this is just going to be an HTTP endpoint. When you deploy it to static web apps, it'll be available under /API/name of function, so parts. And the same thing applies here. So this is the same contribution point from earlier. But I'm going to drag and hit that one instead. Now, when this kicks off, you'll see what it's really doing is it's just it hid it from me. So it's just calling into the SWA CLI, and it's not showing me what I want to see. There we go. I just didn't click the button hard enough. Okay, so you'll see it runs the npm install. That's actually functions. It's starting up the Azure Functions core tools. So that's the local functions emulator. Here, that's the front end that you saw there briefly. And you'll see there's the SWA CLI command. So the stuff that Thomas was doing earlier for database connections, and he was typing in all that stuff, this will actually build the command for you. So there's SWA start, here's where the local front end is, here's where the back end is running on the functions emulator. And this is just the start command for the Vue app. So when I go over here, oh, one more thing, you'll notice that the Vue app is running on 8080. But we're actually looking at port 4280, and that's the proxy, the reverse proxy portion of it. So from here, I can move this thing. I will set a breakpoint in my function app, and then I will go to /API. You are not mine. It's hard to type with one hand. Hold on. Too many slashes. There we go. So now I've hit my breakpoint in my functions backend. So this is the same functions runtime that'll be hosting the app. So when you're doing that kind of development, you can just use the extension to set up that stuff automatically, connects all the pieces, the proxy is all there, everything is there. The other thing, not totally related to the question, but since we're here, you can also do the auth piece. We only kind of glossed over authentication, but you can do not that one.
Do you want me to hold your mic?
I think I'm okay. Yeah, actually, yeah. So from here, I can give it a second here. It's gonna pre-populate an ID. Thanks, man. That's great. So I can define my own username. I can log in. It's gonna kick me back out to the overview page of the app, and then from here I can do auth / me and see that stuff. So you can simulate the front end, the back end, both with breakpoints. You can simulate the auth environment, everything just within the SWA CLI. It's extra easy if you do it, if you start with the extension, because you, like I said, you don't have to create that launch config. You can. If you want to customize it, because we're developers and that's what we do, coming in here and doing Azure Static Web Apps, clicking the gear will actually give you the full launch.json. So from here, like you can customize it. For example, I don't know if you know this or not, but I actually work at Microsoft and I should be using the Edge browser. So I can do that and then launch this. And if I pick the right one, because now this list is going to have 3, it'll launch into Edge instead of into Chrome. But by default, it's going to pick Chrome because, well, that's what all of our customers are using for their dev tools. But yeah. Any other questions in the chat? Oh, yes.
Thanks for the demo on the authentication part. Is there any support for authorization? Let's say I have a role-based access control that I want on my web apps. I always struggle. We choose like Express.js server just to go around the RBAC part. So is there any built-in features for that in static web apps?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think your demo does a really good job of showing that. So when you sign in as a user within the Static Web Apps with Static Web Apps authentication, we actually handle the authentication, but we allow you to provide the customer with a specific role. And then when you receive any of the API calls within your managed functions or any backend that you bring along, we actually set the header to the client principal, the user information that we've collected and any roles that are assigned to the user. And so I actually wonder, Matt, can you show us again that maybe that /auth/me endpoint where we could see if there are any roles assigned to your user?
Yes, let me unbreak the things that I just broke. It'll be just one moment, please.
I think till then, in terms of authorization, what you're probably also asking about is how do I assign different users with different roles? And we offer the ability to add a function to your backend APIs that we've called the roles source function. And you define based on the user that enters the request, what roles you want to grant to that user. And so you can do role management through a variety of ways. You can maintain a database that maps which roles should be granted to which user. You can make a call to Microsoft Graph for the user to determine which groups the user has assigned, or you can add your own custom logic. And so we do that through the function that you define.
I believe this is what you're referring to.
Yes. So this is the emulation that we have with the SWA CLI, right? If you want to use any of the SWA features, it's really convenient to have these locally. In this case, this is not what you'd see in production, right? This is just a development-focused one. But like Mitali was referring to, that special function that is assigned to the user role or choosing the user role, that's what we're configuring here, right?
Right.
So in this case, anonymous and authenticated are the default ones, whether you're logged in or logged out, but you could go ahead and add any within that function. And then if we were to have, like, let's say an admin role here within my local dev in this case, and then we were to either show you the headers and the API functions or show you the /auth/me, you're actually going to get that client principal within your API functions with a header. And then within here, you can see the list of user roles that have been assigned to that user. So yes, to answer your question, yeah, absolutely.
Anything else? We are I think we're coming up on time. Yes. Yeah, well, because I know you.
Okay, I mean, this is almost a troll question, but I was curious. Do you have like an edge compute solution? Like, I hate to be like, are you exactly like Vercel, but are you working on that?
Thanks, Maggie.
I
Go ahead,
told you,
Thomas.
I told you I like the hard questions. So that is definitely an area that we're aware of, right? We build for the front end developer. We know the front end industry and we know the trends that are happening there. And we build with the services that we have within Azure, right? We use our Azure functions for our serverless. We're using our own Azure service to provide all of these offerings. And I think there are other people within the Azure platform that are aware of this and that consider this as a possibility in the future. And whenever we do have that opportunity to take advantage of those Azure services, we're going to jump on that. So this isn't something that we are necessarily fully in control of, but I look very much forward to the next, the future of static web apps on Azure.
That was a really nice way. That was good. I like that.
I need to become a politician now.
Yeah, impressed.
But thanks for the question. Actually, Daria or Mitali, do either of you want to add anything to that?
I can add a word or a few words. Definitely appreciate these questions and definitely appreciate the alignment with the industry trends that we see. And I also wanted to mention that we appreciate our competitors because together we're pushing the industry forward and we're pushing what's possible in this area forward. So we're definitely keeping an eye and an ear out, and we work very hard on industry alignment. You can see it from the support that we provide for Next.js. And we're definitely advocating with our partners to continue improving the overall portfolio of services in Azure. And whenever we get feedback from you, we're always happy to use that and promote that and structure a roadmap around it. So please do reach out to us. Please share these feature requests in GitHub, and know that we absolutely use that to drive our roadmap and to advocate with our partners as well.
Yes. Echoing that point, if this is an important feature request, please let us know, because we factor each and every point that is brought to us when we do our planning. So, yes.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I saw the guy push the button in the back. Yeah, we are at the 45 minutes. Thank you for spending this 45 minutes with us. You've been very delightful. Thank you so much. Daria, Mitali, thanks for answering questions in the chat. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.